I think a lot of people also have been sick for so long that they don't understand what it feels like to be healthy.
It's human nature to get used to where we're at.
Yeah.
Right. And so you see this on both sides of the coin. When somebody's miserable every day, things that I saw reflected in my patients when they changed their diet, that's kind of compelled me. Some would say called me to kind of focus all my effort on reaching out to the millions of people who suffer from chronic disease, chronic inflammation, obesity, type 2 diabetes, fatty liver, autoimmune conditions, that all of these things are, at least to some degree, reversible. I'm a doctor. I'm supposed to make people better. I'm not supposed to medicate them. I'm not supposed to tell them there's no hope. I'm supposed to give them hope, and then also give them a path that they can follow, and also introduce them to a tribe of other people who have had similar problems and similar journeys, and say, hey, we all got better, and you can too.
They say you're chronically ill and there's nothing you can do about it, and here's some pills.
Yeah.
You're just unlucky. Bye.
You're screwed. Yeah, exactly. And I think that even if a patient is screwed, I think there's always hope for at least some degree of improvement. And that's the thing that we need to focus on. Not the fact, if the odds are bad, why focus on that? Because you're not in any way helping the patient. Every interaction between a patient and a doctor should be therapeutic. It should be an opportunity to instill some hope, however small the hope. There should always be hope involved, and there should always be a path. This worked for me. This has worked for thousands or tens of thousands of people. You should try this. There's a huge myth in the medical community, which should not be susceptible to mythology. They should focus and act only on facts, only on evidence, that a diet high in protein is bad for your kidneys. And I've actually done several YouTube videos about this, explaining that this is a complete and utter myth. There's no research, definitely no controlled research, that shows that a high protein diet, protein from any source, is bad for the human kidneys. And there's definitely no controlled research showing that protein from meat is in any way bad for kidneys. And so I've started using the phrase, meat is good for your kidneys. Prove me wrong. Show me the research. And until I've yet to have a single controlled research study thrown in my face saying you're wrong, big guy, meat is bad for your kidneys. There is no research that shows that, yet the average medical doctor, dietitian, nutritionist, they will, especially someone with stage 1, 2, or 3 chronic kidney disease, they will scare them to death. Oh, you need to avoid, especially red meat. Somehow red meat's magical. It's much, much worse for your kidneys than white meat. But okay, that's great. So where's the research? Oh, then you hear the crickets chirping, because there is no research that supports that whatsoever, which makes that at best a hypothesis, at worst a myth, or a big fat lie, like I talk about in my book. People with any medical condition, you're still a human being. You're still Homo sapiens sapien. Therefore, you need to eat a human-specific diet. The American Heart Association, which is the de facto world heart association, because most other countries take their walking orders directly from the American Heart Association when it comes to all matters heart-related, they have stopped recommending a maximum amount of cholesterol intake in the diet. The research is very clear. And the reason why you didn't know that, Mikhaila, is because they didn't have a press conference, as they should have. They should have held a press conference and said, we know, we've been recommending that you limit your cholesterol intake for decades, but the research doesn't support that. And it doesn't matter at all how much cholesterol you eat. Your body's going to make the amount of cholesterol you need. So we are no longer recommending that. That would have been the ethical thing for them to do.
Yep.
Because what happens when they don't hold that press conference is even though the top cardiologists and the people that set the guidelines, they've stopped worrying about cholesterol intake in your diet. And they've stopped recommending that to their personal patients. But we have this thing that I call the echo of the lie. So even though the preeminent authorities have stopped talking about that, it's not even in there. If you print out their dietary guidelines, it's not in there anymore. But we still have all these doctors and dietitians and nutritionists and mothers and fathers who are saying, oh, don't eat cholesterol. It's bad for your heart. That's it, and it's idiotic. Because it was a weak hypothesis for a few decades, and it's been completely disproven. Even though the researchers were trying desperately to prove that it was a valid hypothesis, they failed miserably. And we've still got this echo of the lie that your hairdresser will tell you, that your Aunt Betty will tell you, oh, don't eat the egg yolks, it's too high in cholesterol. But there's no research to support that. So a lot of people listening to this will be like, you're telling me the American Heart Association said that cholesterol is no longer a molecule of concern when it comes to dietary intake? Yep. It's on page 187 of their guidelines, buried in the minutia, but it's there. And so then, then what about saturated fat? Eating saturated fat's bad for you. Well, they've also stepped very quietly away from that recommendation as well. They don't really speak about, if you eat too much saturated fat, that is a directly causative of heart disease. No, actually, that's no longer in their guidelines either. But again, they didn't hold that press conference to let the world know. So we've got all these people who mean well, right? They mean very well, but they're just wrong. And any smart person understands that no matter how good your intentions are, if the information and teaching that you're giving is just wrong, you're going to do harm. And so there's all these people who are scared to death of ancestrally appropriate foods like egg yolks and fatty meat because they're afraid it will affect their heart because of the cholesterol or the saturated fat. And the world authority on all things heart related has stopped that recommendation. They don't even recommend that you limit cholesterol intake or limit saturated fat intake any longer, but they didn't have a press conference, so no one knows.
That's completely criminal, in my opinion.
You're actually doing harm by not making public the fact that you no longer recommend that people limit cholesterol and saturated fat intake, because here's the harm that's being done. There are all kinds of vitamins and minerals, essential fatty acids that you really can only get from foods that are high in cholesterol and high in saturated fat. And so if you're avoiding cholesterol and saturated fat, you're not getting access to this cornucopia of vitamins and minerals and fatty acids that your body absolutely needs for essential, optimal human function. You might be able to limp along without these vitamins and minerals and fatty acids, but never will you realize your best health, your most optimal function. It's just not accessible to you because you're being restricted from these necessary nutrients. Highly processed carbohydrates are very, very addictive. They mimic all of the signs of addiction. We can see PET scan and MRI data in the nucleus accumbens, which is basically the center of the brain that leads to addictive behavior. It lights up just like you're smoking pot or smoking nicotine or smoking crack. It lights up the same way when you're eating highly processed carbohydrates or even thinking about eating them. Food is so wrapped up in emotion, in religion, in family ties that we don't think of that the same way as we do tobacco, which obviously no one needs to smoke. No one needs to do illicit drugs. No one needs to be an alcoholic. So we don't have all the social and emotional ties to those things. We can just single those out and say, that is bad for you, stop that. Just think of the interaction in the average doctor's office. Here's a doctor who received very little training on nutrition, right? On average in Western medicine, it's maybe a few hours of training. And then they are looked upon by the patient as an authority figure, almost like a witch doctor, like they know things I don't know. Anything that comes out of their mouth, I should consider gospel. I should do what they say. But the doctor not only doesn't know what the hell he or she's talking about when it comes to human nutrition on average, they don't know that they don't know. And then they trust these preeminent authorities like the American Diabetes Association, the American Heart Association, the American Academy of Pediatrics. They trust these people just like the patient trusts them. So you've got this almost exponential, just terrible trust problem. And it multiplies each step up the ladder you go. So not only is the doctor deluded and misled, then you multiply that by the doctor misleading and deluding the patient. So it just becomes almost an unsolvable puzzle of how the hell do you fix that interaction? But that's the most important interaction is between the doctor and the patient. And that's why I wrote Lies like I did, so that we break it up into one topic, and this is what your doctor says, but this is the actual truth of the matter. And I think that I wrote it for patients, but if you notice, there's actually an entire chapter in the back dedicated to healthcare providers. Like, this is what you're doing wrong. This is how you correct that. I'm trying to reach out directly to people and say, hey, I know your doctor told you this, but it's actually wrong. Try this instead. It's really sad that interaction has to go so wrong and has to just be exponentially wrong, because no one in that interaction, neither the doctor nor the patient, know the truth, and they also don't know the power of the truth. I mean, just for you and your dad, you know absolutely all of these medical interventions, all of these prescription medications became moot when you discovered the power of proper nutrition, species-specific nutrition, a proper human diet. When you became aware of that yourself, how many doctors did you render meaningless in your life when you made that adjustment and said, hey, maybe my diet's way more important than everybody thinks it is. It's not just about weight loss. It's about optimizing my health. How many doctors did you turn out to pasture personally when you discovered, oh my God, diet really matters a lot? Carbohydrates are uniquely fattening for human beings. That human beings are by design or by evolution low carbohydrate mammals. That's just what we are. And so anyone who's eating over 100 total grams of carbohydrates a day, you're going to have some degree of hyperinsulinemia, some degree of inappropriate chronic inflammation. And it may manifest in your skin, it may manifest in your gut, in your joints, in your hair. There are any number of, in your mental health, right? We all tend to express the inappropriate inflammation and hyperinsulinemia different parts of our body. And that's why initially a lot of people don't see the connection between all of these chronic medical conditions and diets, because we manifest them in different ways. But once you start to lower the carbohydrate intake, you're going to immediately start to notice improvements. And a lot of people lose inches before they lose pounds or kilograms.